We're going to have professional attorneys, some of the best attorneys in the country, as well as a number of academics talking about the particular programs under the Clean Air Act, what we've been able to do over the past 40 years, and have some rigorous debate about what tools we have to deal with climate change in the future, and whether that should be the Clean Air Act or some other kind of legislation. When you look in the statute book of environmental statutes, the Clean Air Act is certainly the thickest one, and it contains 6 distinct programs that are called titles, and they regulate everything from how we manufacture goods to what kind of emissions our cars can have, to all types of behaviors across the economy. And the overarching goal is to make sure that our air quality meets some minimum standards for protecting human health and the environment. So it is an overarching statute that regulates a lot of different types of human behavior. You know, what gave rise to the environmental statutes that were passed in the early 1970s, including the Clean Air Act, was probably a series of events. There certainly were heavy pollution loads in East Coast and Mid-Atlantic states and cities, lots of smog, noticeable air pollution, very noticeable water pollution. The story is often told of how the Cuyahoga River in Ohio actually caught fire a number of times before the Clean Water Act was passed. And so environmental issues were coming to the forefront. The other thing was the first Earth Day in 1970. So there was a groundswell of public support for environmental protection, and I think Congress responded to that by passing, a comprehensive set of legislation. But the first was the Clean Air Act. So understanding atmospheric chemistry, understanding weather patterns, these are all things that our regulators have to be able to do in looking at regulating individual sources, and that citizens have to understand when they're concerned about the air quality in their particular neighborhood or their city. Many states showed that they couldn't meet the health-based standards under the Clean Air Act. That is, they couldn't protect their populations from harmful air pollution because of the air pollution coming from other states. So that if they had every business in their state closed down and not emit any more pollution, they would still be, their citizens would still be at risk of harm from air pollution. And so the Clean Air Act has changed over time to address our better understanding of how pollution is transported. There are certain things that can be implemented through the Clean Air Act, certain programs that would lead to significant reduction in domestic greenhouse gas production. And maybe that's not all of the solution. Maybe we need a separate program that addresses climate change through cap and trade. But what's happening right now is that people seem to be polarizing on an either-or track. So those are some policy issues that are coming up or exist right now that people are having to work through to say what works better, the Clean Air Act or a new piece of legislation. People say Portland is livable because we can walk in our neighborhoods, we can walk to everything we need. There's a daycare, there's a pharmacy, there's a home for older people, there's a grocery store. But what it results in is a daycare next to a freeway or a natural foods co-op right next to a metals foundry. And I think that's a great thing because we're not hiding away our problems. People are actually having to experience them on a daily basis. And that's how we'll be able to make things better. If we could just put all of the pollution, in the Northwest Industrial Sanctuary and nobody went there, people wouldn't notice when there was a gasoline smell in the air. They wouldn't notice when traffic was particularly bad and their kid has an asthma attack. So in that way we confront everyday pollution problems, and I think that probably helps us to make progress.